Hello, my name is Vicki Laurel with Create and Adorn. Thank you for selecting this video and thank you for joining me for this technique video. Each week I bring new videos to our YouTube channel that share new jewelry ideas, projects, or maybe new products we have on our website. I don't focus very much on teaching the very specific jewelry techniques in those videos, mostly due to time, because it takes a good chunk of time to properly show how to do a technique, but also because a lot of my regular customers have been taking classes from me for years and are very familiar with the techniques. That being said, there are many that aren't, and probably the majority, right? Or maybe it's been years since you've done this certain technique, and so you just need a refresher. And especially as we hopefully grow on this YouTube platform, there'll be many people that have never taken classes with us, or again, just haven't done this technique in a long time, or something like that. So I want to present a handful of our technique, most commonly used techniques, I should say, because each new project or design that I show each weekend really only uses a handful of techniques. Just the same techniques, just over and over again to make different designs. So once you have them, you kind of have them. So again, I just want to show these few technique videos that will at least give you the basics that you would need to make any of these projects that we show. And even though those projects also have their own separate video tutorial, I still don't cover specific techniques in those videos either. So these ones are just for focusing on that technique and not so much a specific piece of jewelry here. And that being said, I've condensed this down as small as I can and make it as quick as I can. My typical class is about 3 hours long, and no one wants to watch a 3-hour video. So I'm trying to scale them down for these videos, and then I actually will still have like a full-length class video on these techniques as well down the road. But for right now, I kind of want to give people at least kind of quick ones, if they need a refresher, or at least to get started. So today we're focusing on pearl knotting, which is one of my very, very favorite classes and favorite techniques that I use. And so again, because these classes are generally like 3 hours long, I'm not going to be able to cover everything we generally cover in class, but I at least want to be able to give you kind of a little bit of information and a refresher. So what I'm doing is making a little bit of a table or something here so I can be closer to the camera. So even though it cuts me off, that's okay. And see if this works a little bit better. So I'm assuming people know what I mean by pearl knotting, but just in case you don't, right, there are knots between these beads. And you don't have to knot pearls, right? You can knot any bead. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it has little knots between it. And knotting, it's traditionally used for pearls or on gemstones, but it's not a have to. It won't hurt the pearls not to be knotted. It's just a technique. And so I use it for a design element. If I want to have the look of something knotted, or if I do have a really nice strand of pearls, knotting is a nice way to enhance the strand without taking anything away from it. And anything knotted will hang nicer and drape nicer because it's knotted. It's just a beautiful technique to use. So I knot everything on a German silk. And it comes in tons of colors. Here's just a few. And let me see. Let me try to grab a few things. The color matters because it's visible, right? The knot is visible. You have to think of it like a spacer bead in a way. And so generally I'm trying to match up the color that I'm going to use with whatever the bead is and how I can enhance it more. So again, in our full class, we go into this in much more detail, but here's just one example. These are green garnets that have a little bit of this carnelian garnet in here. And I love this strand, how it was strung kind of naturally. And so this is just knotted on an olivine color. Maybe kind of hard to see here, but it also could have been knotted on like a light brown or carnelian color. That would have been really pretty. This little bracelet we did in one of our first lives, and this has has one of our precious palettes, which is a mix of colors. And so I used like a pretty, light blue in this to enhance these. So the pearls I'm going to show or use today are glass, but they're kind of a gray, light gray color. So I'm going to use this lilac as my demonstration. The other thing I want to point out on them though is size. So there's a little number in the corner. And this is a German silk that comes in even numbers. So it has 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and it gets thicker as the number gets higher. The silk gets thicker. And you'll match that up with the size of the hole in the bead. And when you're using a freshwater pearl or gemstone, natural gemstone, generally they're drilled very small. And so something like a size 2, which is the smallest, you'll definitely use those on like those teeny tiny gemstones or tiny tiny rice pearls. Those would work. But generally we use a size 4 on most freshwater pearls and gemstones. Because I am doing a glass pearl today, so a glass bead has a larger hole because it's man-made, I'm going to do a size 6, which is the next step up. And this is also a carded silk. It has a little needle on the end that's kind of bent up. See that needle? So we find the needle on the card and then you start taking it off. And silk also comes on spools. You might have seen it on spools. But if you use the spooled silk, then you need to put a needle on it. If you're going to put a needle on it, then you've got to fold it in half, right? And so the diameter you would need would be half the size. This is great because the thickness, diameter, you're matching up exactly. There's no guessing with like folding it in half. It has the needle already on here, right? So we're not worried about, and it's a wire needle, so it can't hurt you or break or anything like that. It's really, really great. But this silk is also really beautiful. It's 2 strands of silk twisted together. That's how they get the needle on. But when they do that, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it. Not much. It makes just a beautiful texture to it, which just enhances the knot more. So I think it makes a beautiful texture of the knot as well. There's 2.5 yards on these cards. And also I should say this is a German silk, not a Chinese silk. And it's just a better quality. It drapes better. So you could find a carded silk by the, I think the Beadalon folks make one. Sorry, I'm going to move that notification. Make one, but it's from China. And so it's just stiffer. It just doesn't drape as nice or feel as nice. This is only like $2, $2.50. So it's a really good, it's not a bad price at all. And it's just a much better quality. When you knot a necklace, you need twice as much silk or cord as the length of your necklace. So if I'm going to do 18 inches or 20, let's round it to 20, I would need 40 inches of cord. Again, this has 2.5 yards, so this is like 90 inches. So it's plenty on here. I'm going to take the entire thing off the card. So it's going to feel really long. You'll see all these little kinks in here from it being on the card. That's totally fine. You don't need to iron it or wet it or any of that stuff. The kinks will go out as you knot. What you could do, though, is stretch it, because silk can stretch over time. So you could pre-stretch it, and that would help. I don't find that it stretches that much over time, but a lot of it could depend on how big or heavy your pearls are, how you store it, that kind of thing. I'll show you just a sec how you would stretch it though. So I'm at the other end. Needles at one end, and at the other end is just our end of cord. When you start a necklace, this knot I'm going to make is just an overhand knot. See it? But for the end knot, we need it to be a little heavier. I'm going to do a double knot not a knot twice. I'm going to make a knot and then take the tail and go through a second time. Right? So that's the double knot. I made a knot and then taking the tail and one more time. And then I'm going to try to scoot this down towards the ends just so I'm not wasting string as much as possible. But then I've got a fatter knot. Let's see if I can, I'm going to tip this just a little bit and scoot this a bit. See, so there's my knot in the very kind of end, a couple inches away from the end. Okay, then I'm going to string on the few that I'm going to demo here. And I like to string on all the beads first before I knot them. And I'm sorry, this is cutting my head off a little bit. So, for a couple of reasons. If you were going to stretch it, this is a great way to stretch it. To go ahead and string all the beads on that you're going to use. Right? I only have 4 on here now. But let's say this is an 8mm pearl, so like 50 of them. The weight of that, and then take the other end and wrap it around a doorknob or something and let that stretch get out of it just overnight. You can let it stretch overnight, then take it down the next day and knot it. That would get all that stretch out of it. If you don't want to do it any longer than that, if you were to forget about it for several days, it would become really stiff. I mean, you can still use it, but it would be stiff and a little harder to knot with. So I'm just going to put on like 5 pearls here because we're just demoing it. And again, in the longer, more intense like pearl video actual class, I show how to finish it off and things like that. But we're just going to doing the pearl line quickie here to focus on that technique. So I'm going to leave 1 pearl at the end, and I pulled all my other pearls down here. So that could be the rest of your necklace. But I need some string. Now, we're also using a tweezer method to do this, not an awl. This is a knotting tweezer. This is a size 5 if you order it somewhere. We also have them available. This is a Japanese steel, so it's just a higher quality, again, than a Chinese one. You want to make sure it comes all the way tapered to a very sharp point or tip, that it's not rough here. If they're not even, which, this is a really nice quality one. We sell them for less than $5. But if you came across a cheaper one where the 2 ends weren't even, or if there's a little bit of a burr on there, that would be bad. So I want it very smooth, tapered, really nice quality. It's so hard to show on the camera. I'm going to make a knot around my non-dominant hand. This is my left hand, and I keep it like this, which helps me wrap this around. Pearl is underneath. With my dominant hand, I cross and drop it through. I'm just making a knot. It's just an overhand knot. I'm laying this down. Let's see if I can lay it kind of in this direction. Here's my knot. Right here. Beep, right there. I open this up really large so I can see that this is not twisted around. It's really easy for this to get twisted, and now that's a gap. That's a boo-boo. So by taking the time to lay it out straight, keep this large, then I can see that I only have the one knot that I want. Tweezers goes through this knot, and then I'm going to grab on with the tip of the tweezer about just a 1/4 of an inch up on, very, very close to the tip, right next to the pearl, right? I pull on this, the strand that's through it, to make sure I'm as tight as possible. When all that is in order, then I pull on this end, turn this, and it's going to make a knot right around the tweezer. Okay? Then, whoops, that's a boo-boo. Then I'm going to lay it down and pull that out. Sorry, those notifications. Now, let me do it several more times. Then I'm going to pull down my next pearl. I've got a knot there. Any way you get this overhand knot is just fine. So you don't have to wrap it around your hand if that feels awkward. I can just do this knot, overhand knot, and lay it down. Okay. Then tweezers through the knot. Grab on right next to that pearl. Pull this tight. Then I lay it down. I'm putting the index finger of my non-dominant hand on that knot so I can pull the tweezer out. Then I don't want to pick it up. I'm going to leave it laying down, and I'm going to grab with my tweezers on the silk and push it towards the pearl really gently to get that knot. Right? And that gets my knot there. If I pick it up before I do that, then gravity pulls the knot away from the pearl and we have a gap. Okay. I'm going to do that all again. Okay, I'm going to make a knot, dropping this in through, laying her out, straight line. Here's my knot. Tweezers goes through the knot, grabs on right next to the pearl, right next to it. Then I'm going to pull this end. The knot is forming right around. I'm going to make sure it doesn't twist on itself. Right around that tweezer, right? I'm going to pull this. Tweezer's still in there, right? Pull it as tight as I can. Then I'm going to put my finger on the knot so that I can pull the tweezer out and the knot stays. Tweezer comes out, knot's still there. Don't pick it up. I'm going to grab onto the silk with the tweezer so I can gently slide the knot to the pearl. So, like any of these skills, it just takes practice, right? Now, if we get a gap, silk can unknot fairly easily. Not quickly, but easily. So I'm going to do my knot. Tweezers goes through. Grab it onto the tip there. Here's this end. If I pull it around. Now, if I don't put a finger on here, I forget about all that, and I just decide to pick it up. Now I've got a gap, right? See that gap? I've got a pearl, I've got the knot, and a gap. So you can do a couple things depending on how close or how big the gap is. I would take the knot out at this point because it's fairly a good sized gap. So I would spend time taking the tweezer and taking that knot out. However, if it was a little closer, you could just make another knot, a double knot. So I've just made another knot. I'm going to place the tweezer in that gap. There's the knot. And make another knot on top of it. And that kind of eats up that first knot. And now they're both in here. And it doesn't look, maybe hard to tell from there, it doesn't look like grossly huge, large compared to the other ones, especially when you have another pearl next to it. So you have options, when you make that little boo-boo, if that happens, for taking the knot out or just making another one over it. Any of those things will work. And again, in the kind of full tutorial for the pearl knotting, I cover a lot more things like that. I just wanted to at least show that because we're already like 20 minutes. Finger on the knot, comes out and pushes. And there you go. There's a little sample of 5. I finish them off with a little bead tip that covers the knot. I'm going to show that in the stringing tutorials as well. But there's a little refresher maybe if it's been a while since you've knotted or needed to remember the hands, that kind of thing. So thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. And go out there and sparkle brightly like the star that you are.